This morning we're going to talk with the Ziegler brothers, Jim and Barry. And most of their story, I hope, is going to be about growing up in Cameron Falls and all of the things. And the names of people are interesting too, because people who watch this video will remember the names of the people that you mentioned. So maybe you can start by telling maybe about when your mom and dad would have gone to Cameron Falls.
My dad went there and doing a contract to build a switch yard at Alexander's Landing. And I don't can remember what date it was or what year it was, but that's where he met Mom.
Right after the First War, as soon as he came, or Second War.
Yeah.
Okay.
He worked for hydro construction prior to World War II.
Oh.
And as soon as he came back, of course, there was a labor shortage for skilled people. So he went right back to work with hydro, and he got shipped up here.
Okay. So that would have been, that's the beginning of that dams, that type of thing up there then, eh? Okay.
Well, the original Cameron Dam was built in 1920.
Right.
And Alexander was 1930.
Okay.
And then they expanded the switch yards, and my dad was a construction electrician then.
Okay. Okay.
So,
So then he met your mom here.
yeah,
Yeah.
Cameron,
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Okay.
Yeah,
And the girls had been there, the family had been there,
since the early 20s.
yeah, the early 20s, and then they lived on the east side of the river.
Yes. I was surprised when people told me there was houses on that side of the river,
Yeah.
because I didn't realize. I don't ever see pictures of that.
Well, I don't think there were very many pictures taken back then, but there were a bunch of shacks back in there that people lived in. And I think the chimney not long ago was still partially there where Grandma and Grandpa Ditchfield lived,
Oh,
or
wow.
our mom lived.
Right, right.
And then they moved over later on to the news on the west side. There was where the trappers they had mink farm and fox farm there.
Right.
And then there was a small dairy there. That's what the barn hydro turned that into their carpenter shop.
Okay. Okay. So they actually had that provided something for everybody who lived there then, because now I got to remember that's right. There was no road to Nipigon in those days,
Just the CNR.
so everybody went by sea. Was there something that went on the trackway? I just remember Ada Stanley always telling me that she walked all the way
Probably.
on the rail line
Yeah, yeah.
into town.
Yeah.
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 She said she would come on Saturday night and walk the rail line. So how would people have got back and forth? What did you ride on to come on the trackway?
Well, the CNR, I mean, things were kind of loosey-goosey
Right.
in terms of the train would come chugging down the tracks and they'd see somebody standing there, they'd just stop.
Okay.
You want to lift into town? You jump in the boxcar and come into Nipigon.
Okay. Okay. But so then everything you needed came by back and forth on the CN line at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when I was a kid, I remember driving, they had the road there, but it was all corduroy road. And they either went in by, you could go in by, in the wintertime by horse and sled or dog team. But I remember driving in one time, Dad and I, we got stuck there coming down over the series of hills there. We got stuck on the corduroy road there, and Dad out in the bush with the axe there chopping down a tree, and we got it jacked up and we made it into town, but it was all mud and yeah.
So when you were out there, you were sort of out there for a while. So now, in your era, was there school out there?
Yeah.
I've just seen recently somebody's been posting pictures of a group at the school there.
Yeah.
So now, where would the school have been?
When you first drive in, where you go to the powerhouse,
Yep.
you go up there and there's a curve and there's the hill right there.
Right.
Right on the left-hand side was where the school was.
Okay.
You can still see the field there.
Yeah,
Okay.
ball field there. That's where the school was.
Okay. In relationship to the community hall.
Just down, the community hall was about 200 yards up the street and to the right.
Okay.
And then there
Okay.
was the road up
Right.
to the
right.
top of the
At
hill.
the top of the hill.
And then when you went there to go to the top of the hill, right there in the V was Johnny Sutherland was the
Right.
store master.
Right.
That's where the store was.
The
Right.
post office.
In the post office, and then off to that right of that was where the medical center was just a Red Cross in there. There was a built house there.
Once, but I've never heard anybody comment on that before.
Yeah,
So you was staffed by a nurse?
yeah.
Yeah.
I spent the night in there. I had a fever, so Mom walked me down and up into the medical center there, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just a house.
Right. But at least you had something there.
Yeah,
But of course, if it was desperate and the train wasn't coming,
Yeah,
you're in
that's
trouble.
exactly right.
Yeah.
You're in trouble then, yeah. What do you think the population of the colony would have been about?
There was 50 houses,
What is there?
so somewhere between 200 and 250.
People, right. And any women work at the hydro then?
yeah.
Yeah, there was 4 or 5 worked in the office there.
Oh, right, of course, in the office workers, right.
Our Aunt Leona worked there.
Oh, okay,
She worked in, I don't know what she did in the mill there, in the, in the plant, but
Well, everything was manual back
Yeah,
then, to
everything
do
was
the
manual.
payroll, and,
Right.
and it's not
Right.
like it is today. Everything was
right,
laborious.
right,
that was my dad's sister's daughter.
okay,
And then she went to Thunder Bay and worked for Hydro, and then they were going to a meeting in Kenora or Dryden or whatever, and she was killed in a car accident.
oh my.
But yeah, I can remember when they phoned her, you had to phone the operator there, and they plugged you in there. And
Right,
I think we had 2 digits. I can't remember whether it was
Yeah,
87 or
two number dialing.
yeah, 2-number dialing.
right.
And it was a big deal when we got the bell system in there. Like, holy moly!
Right. So when you had the 2-digit dialing, you must have had party line.
No,
Yeah.
Well, you didn't.
No,
Oh,
no.
okay.
there was, Hydro owned it.
Oh, okay.
So when you wanted to make a phone call, you called the powerhouse, and the operator on duty, the manual patch cords,
Right.
would patch you in and then dial the number.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
So it really got modernized there in the 60s when Bell took over, and
So when you're
then there was
talking
direct dialing
when you're talking about the offices, where would they have been located?
right in the powerhouse.
Right in the powerhouse. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've been through there a long time ago, but
It's hard to tell where.
yeah, I guess so.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
because everything's been
Yeah.
gutted, new modern machinery's put in, and
Right.
so
But basically, when you think of the work that was done that many years ago, and it's still functioning today,
Yeah.
it's mind-boggling
Yeah.
to me when I think about how long it's been there.
one of the interesting things I remember is that this is in the 50s and the early 60s, before the microwave system was expanded and the telephone system was expanded. But Hydro on the hill beside the skating rink and stuff,
Okay.
Hydro had a great big radio tower on that hill.
Okay.
And was how they talked to Toronto with the VHF and FM radio, and our Uncle Larry was the radio man.
Oh,
So when somebody wanted to talk to Toronto, Ontario Hydro head office in downtown Toronto, they had to get patched through on that radio,
Oh.
and it was pretty sketchy.
I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Interesting. Eh? Yeah.
but back then, northwestern Ontario was an isolated electrical island. It wasn't connected to anybody.
Right.
So they ran their own show from coordinated from the PUC building in Thunder Bay. Hydro had offices up there, and
Right.
and the regional operator for Ontario Hydro would coordinate things with Cameron and the fellows out at Kenora to make sure there was enough.
Right. Wow. You know, it was interesting. I recently interviewed Lau Ryla about the bell, and I had found a piece of paper that said Geraldton area got telephone system way before Nipigon did, and I was surprised.
Because of the railway.
Yeah, I was surprised then, I guess, that it went there before it came here. But yeah, telephone system would have been something that you didn't just pick up and phone like you do today?
No,
No.
there was no direct dialing
No.
at all.
So when you drove in, when the store was there, on the left-hand side is where the original rink was. And I was telling Barry, I can remember when I was a little kid, over there skating, and the big kids were there. And what they had done is, I think it was a Finn guy had a dairy farm, small dairy farm there. Because when our house was built, Hydro took it over and you turned it into a carpenter shop.
Okay.
But I remember sitting there on the ice, me and another little kid chipping the ice out and chewing on the ice. And the older boys coming.
Because they had dumped a bunch of milk on the
On
ice,
the ice.
Oh,
made the ice nice and white.
Yeah, but talk about stink in the springtime.
yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
See, that field was all open in there because that's where they had some cows in there, the dairy cows in there, right? Yeah, it was, and then there was, I don't know, you probably heard of this fellow, Charlie Kitchenini.
Nope. I
Charlie
heard that.
Kitchenini was one of the guides that brought Prince of Wales
Oh.
up the Nipigon
He
River.
was, he was a local native.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard the name, but
He lived in a shack on the Fraser Lake Road. As soon as you turn off the highway
right?
and you went around the corner, that was the guard shack there. Charlie lived in there.
Ah.
And so when I was younger, he used to play the piano for the kids at Sunday school. So Johnny Sutherland was the storekeeper. I go and Johnny would load up the wagon there, and I'd go over, take the wagon over, and I'd sit there for hours listening to Charlie talking about the days when they canoed up and down the river and
Oh.
all the fish and all that stuff. Have a cup of tea with him. The cups are never clean, but anyways, it was just a fascinating person to listen to and talk to.
Do you remember, because of your camp there you guys had on Fraser Lake?
Yep.
And at the Camp 16, are you familiar with that?
That's before you get there, right?
Correct. And that used to be a lumber camp.
Right.
And it also was a German POW
Right.
camp.
I did hear it briefly. Then.
And Charlie lived, there was a shack to the right,
Right.
and that's where he lived. And I think I lived there until he passed away. And then on the left-hand side of the road, he had dug out into the sandbank was his cold room with a little old door on it. And we'd fish all winter and salt the fish and put it in there. And
I just know, just going into Fraser, there had to have been a building there because my daughter-in-law and I did lots of bottle digging
Yeah.
okay,
there. And I
Yeah.
can remember doing that. And we said, oh, somebody had a building here because there was lots of tinware and bottles in that area too. And a couple of places on that Fraser Lake Road, there had to have been buildings. When you turn off to go to Elizabeth,
the horse
Yeah.
barns.
we
Yeah.
did, yes, right, we did that, and we did lots of bottle digging over
Yeah.
a bank, because in those days, they just threw everything over the banks.
Yeah.
And Lynn and I did a lot of bottle digging up
Yeah.
there, so you knew where the different places were there.
That dugout that Barry was talking about, there was a native from here, from Lake Helen, Peter
Mhm.
Manitobanus. He trapped up there. We used to give him a ride up the road there when he'd come in from Nipigon. Anybody seen him walking on the Carron Falls Road, give Peter a ride. Eh?
Right.
And every Friday he would come out. I believe he was hit by a car on the Nipigon River Bridge.
Oh,
But my mom spoke highly of him and Charlie Kitchenini there. Yeah.
right,
I remember Charlie had an old Army, Canadian Army 303 he used to use for hunting. And somehow the barrel got bent on it. He couldn't hit nothing. So he walked all that way from up there down to Cameron, tracked my dad down. Oliver, I can't hit anything with my gun, but I held it up, looked through the bore. Well, it's bent. So they took it over to the powerhouse in the machine shop, and those guys, they didn't pick up the phone and order parts back in the day. They actually forged
Right.
parts there.
right.
Anyways, they put it in some sort of a machine and heated it up and bent it straight, and
Wow.
Yeah.
I think even for me, it's been well known that a lot of people who worked in those shops in Cameron were duper people. If you had a problem, they were able to.
Yeah, you
do
had
it.
to.
Yeah,
Back then, there
yeah.
was no,
And,
there was no Amazon.
right, but I heard lots of comments about
Yeah.
things that those people were, the
Yeah.
workers were able to do, because you're right, you had to do
Yeah.
that because there was no other way to create stuff.
The swimming pool was built by everybody in the community chipped in, but all the electrical done was by Dad's crew and then the welders and pipe fitters and machinists, and they made all the parts
Right,
for the swimming pool. We had a swimming pool in Cameron Falls before they had a swimming pool in Nipigon,
yeah, yeah.
you know,
sure.
and,
Yeah,
and yeah, my grandmother, her grandmother lived just across the street there. Lakes moved into that house.
oh yeah, I know Marion well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They lived in that house, but I can remember being in that house when I was little. But originally, we lived at Alexander when we first went there.
Okay. I
Lived in a
think
shack.
Russ Walker lived in the Alexander area too. I
Yeah,
think he told me that they lived
there was,
along there.
there was 4 permanent
Houses
houses,
there.
and then there was a half a dozen
Shacks.
shacks.
Right, right.
And people nowadays wouldn't live in them, but back then, you lived
Yeah,
where you could.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, Ted Diamond has a few pictures of those shacks and people out there, especially because they hunted as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can't remember who the guy is that's got the cougar or something in his hand. Anyway, Ted had a picture of that, but you're right,
Okay.
they were shacks. I guess if you had the wood to heat it, you were all
yeah,
right.
yeah.
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 See, that's where when I was very little, that's where we at first lived, in the shack there. And then we went to Dryden. We were in Dryden for a little while because they were building a switch yard in Dryden. And that's where Linda, the Benson, our cousin, her and her mom and dad, they moved there too. And then
Okay.
we moved back here and they stayed with us.
So who would have built your shack? Was it just happened to be, it was already built, somebody
Yeah,
had
there were just unused post-construction
buildings?
office shacks, yeah,
Okay,
just slapped together, no insulation, just boards on studs and, because they weren't built for permanent habitation, but
Right.
people just moved into them because you had to live somewhere.
right,
You know where Jubenvilles lived,
yes,
eh?
yes.
Well, we were in behind there.
Okay, okay,
Jubenvilles lived.
right. I was always gonna go bottle digging in that area too, but the grass is so thick and
Oh, yeah.
and deep to get down into the ground, but yeah, I remember that where they lived there too, right?
Well, we had a cousin there, Deidre. She drowned in the river. The operator come out and seen her floating around in the river there, and they fished her out and did artificial respiration on her. And
Brought her around.
Dr. Jeffrey came in from Nipigon. They brought Doc Jeff in there, and I don't know what he did. He gave her a shot of adrenaline or something, and yeah,
Wow.
she turned out to be a nurse.
Oh, did you swim at all in the river, or
Yeah,
there was a place, I don't know, whether it was a safe place?
Fraser Creek,
Oh,
you know where
oh,
the bridge
right,
and on the Cameron side of the big, what do they call it, Little Fraser now, or
right, yeah,
whatever?
Little Fraser, yeah.
On the Cameron Falls side of it, there was a beach there.
Oh,
Yeah.
And when we get booted out of the swimming pool for misbehavior, then we just go down to
okay,
the beach.
but after you got out, you brought salt with you.
Yeah.
You had to put salt on your legs to get the bloodsuckers off you.
Covered in bloodsuckers.
oh,
But yeah,
wow. So you had the swimming pool, then you had the playground.
yeah.
What was down in
yeah,
in
by where the
gully
rink was,
down
yeah.
there, the playground, and that must have been all
Yeah,
manufactured
they built all those
by all
right
of the
in the
work-
plant, yeah.
right there.
First snowblower I ever seen. They made that snow machine there to do the snow and take the snow off the ice there. We used to scrape it too, but
Right,
yeah, they built the shack there for us, and
right, so you actually had, she's telling me 1 minute left, okay. We'll restart, Kirsten. So besides the swimming pool, skating rink, playground, you really had quite a few activities for kids to do.
Tennis court
Oh, a tennis court, right?
and the community hall with the gymnasium in it.
Oh, I didn't know had gym. I've been in the community hall for
Yeah.
social things,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
Yeah,
My mom, she was a good tennis player. I remember going to play tennis with her one time. She talked me into going and playing tennis with her. I didn't play tennis. I just got hit with tennis balls. But,
Amazing though, when you think of all the facilities that you had there,
And,
all created by need, right?
and it seemed that, in my opinion, as a little kid, most of the school teachers were from the British Isles.
yeah,
And so we learned different things
Right.
than the kids in Nipigon. We played soccer all the time. We played cricket all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's
And tennis was another big thing
Right.
because
right.
a lot of the original people that worked for Ontario Hydro came over from England because they had experience in the electrical business and how to run power plants and
Now, I'm learning all these little things because
Yeah.
other people didn't mention.
so that's why there was tennis courts
And,
because they
and
loved.
you're right, because when I came here in '59, already there were half a dozen teachers. And Gwen Nyman came the same time I did, but the ads were in Britain, come to Canada to teach
Yeah.
school.
yeah,
And that's how they got to come here.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, isn't it, so that they came here for many reasons,
Yeah,
not just to teach, but to fill that need at the hydro. Wow.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we had to finally say, we want to play a little bit of baseball too. But yeah, we learned to play soccer.
Well, didn't they teach you rounders then? I remember being in England, it was like baseball, but it was called rounders.
well,
It
it's
was
like
something
cricket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we called it cricket.
Yeah,
but it's
I
probably
played
the same.
cricket too, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, rounders was with the ball and you just kept running around.
Oh, okay. We
But,
didn't.
uh,
I don't
we
think
didn't-
we
I
played
wonder
that.
they
I don't remember that.
Okay, I thought
But I
that
remember having to learn how to play soccer though. Well, it was a
In the
good thing.
wintertime, we'd shovel off a big area in the activity field there at the school,
right.
and it was just like playing road hockey, really.
Yeah,
How many classes would have been in the school, do you think?
1 to 8. 1 to 8.
Oh, there was 8th grade, oh, the 8th grade.
Yeah, and originally there was 3 classrooms, 2 classrooms
2 classrooms.
on
I
the,
started.
on the original school on the west side of the river. I don't know about the east side of the river because they tore it down when they built the new school.
Yeah,
But anyways, there was two classrooms and then and there was a big room in the basement.
yeah,
And then about my first year of school, when I started grade 1, Hydro had just completed an expansion of the school and built an attached 2-room
Oh, okay,
to it. So then there was 3 classrooms.
Yeah.
Because they turned one of the classrooms into the video room,
yeah.
whatever they used to call it when they showed films and stuff.
right. My girlfriend came here, she taught at Cameron, that was Elizabeth Scott. And
Oh, yeah, I
always
remember her.
forgot to ask her,
Yeah.
how did you ever hear to come there to teach school? And you think she must have had
Yeah.
ads out somewhere.
Yeah.
Do you remember her?
Yep, my grade 1 and 2 teacher, I don't know what her first name was, but she was Miss Mott.
Yeah.
Remember her?
Yeah, Miss Mott. Yeah.
And then after my second year, she emigrated to Australia.
Oh,
And then that's when Miss Scott moved
right,
and
right.
took her position.
She just recently died
Oh,
about a month
okay.
and a half ago. She lived in BC nearly all her life after she.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember, do you remember the Miss Mott? She had, I don't know where she was originally from. I'll say Toronto, who knows? But anyway, she's never wintered in Northern Ontario before. And she showed up, and she's got a little Sunbeam convertible sports car.
Yeah.
And she lived on top of the hill and just drive down. I don't know why she drove.
Yeah.
It was a 2-minute walk, but
Yeah.
she'd drive down that big hill. And 2 or 3 times a week, she'd end up bushing the car into the snowbank. It would get stuck, and all us kids would run up there. What a little car. We just picked the darn thing up and put it back on the road. And
Yeah, you don't think of anybody driving around Cameron,
no,
really.
no.
Yeah.
Most of the fellas that worked at Cameron, they walked to work every
Right.
morning.
But we had everything there. When we were younger, when you were like, when I was 14, 15, 13, whatever, oh, most of us had motorbikes to ride or old cars we drove around, and old trucks that we drove around, and hydro security. If you got caught speeding, you got heck. Second time, well, you couldn't drive for a while. The third time, you were done for the year. But none of us ever got into trouble because, we could drive around. We had, Gary Hill had his motorcycle, a motorbike. We had a little bike and had cars,
Right.
old cars and Jeep and trucks and,
So lots of trails to go on,
yeah,
lots of places to go, yeah.
and I can remember Gary Hill and I, we were up at the camp there,
What
Hey.
camp?
at Abitibi there. They had the
Oh, the
barracks
Abitibi
up-
community.
Yeah, the Abitibi. And Gary was going to paint this car. So anyways, he started hand painting. We started hand painting it. And be darned if the wind didn't come up and it blew sand on it. And it looked really cool.
I guess so.
And then years later you see where they did these spot things, on vehicles. Well, Gary was the first one, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, so you must have done a lot of fishing,
Yeah.
did you? Yeah.
Yeah, Mom and Dad, they would go fishing every weekend up on Lake Nipigon or Forgan or Fraser.
Okay,
Back in those days, before they fixed the Fraser Lake Road up, there was only a few people in the area that had four-wheel drive vehicles. Dad had one,
Yeah.
Andy Rintala had a Jeep.
Red had one.
Don Martin had a camp
Yep.
Yeah,
at the end of Fraser. He would have been one of the first ones likely.
yeah, but it was, very few people from even Nipigon would come into Cameron and go up the Fraser Lake Road because it was impassable.
Jack Thompson told me he fished up there lots.
Yeah, yeah. But you
Some
need-
guys walked up there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, all the way, they'd go as far as maybe the horse barns, which
Yeah.
were about 2 miles in, park there and then walk the rest of the way.
wow.
Can you imagine?
No, but
Just to go fishing?
yeah, but it's still mind-boggling to Herman and I that Fraser Lake is holding on to all those pickerel
Yeah.
all these years later.
When,
It's gotta
when
be
we were
something natural
kids,
in there.
and we'd, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a summer, we'd go up to Fraser Lake. 'Cause
Yeah.
It was a journey then,
I
to
guess
get
so.
even in there with the Jeep. And, of course, we'd camp right on the beach there. There's no beach camping allowed now.
No.
But there was only, anyways, we'd camp right on the beach, and there was the big Great Lakes paper, which is now, what's it called now in Thunder Bay?
Resolute,
Yeah, Resolute, but originally it was Great Lakes paper.
Right.
They had the timber rights in that area. And they would fill, and during the wintertime, they'd fill Fraser Lake full of water. And then log though, in the spring, they put all the logs on the ice
right?
near the outlet of Fraser Lake down
Right.
to Elizabeth. And the logs were cut in 4-foot lengths,
Okay,
just so that it would make it down to the river. And there was a big dock right at the beach, but it was like 8 feet high.
oh,
They would put like 3 times the volume of water into Fraser that it holds now. And then in springtime, with all these mountains of logs, they'd pull the dam open and,
And she would go.
so the logs went out at the south end,
yeah.
down
yeah,
through,
down to,
that's narrow, of course it would have been more water.
oh, there
'cause
would have
now
been a
it's pretty-
torrent of water going through.
And then go down to Elizabeth,
Yeah, and they did the same thing at Elizabeth. They'd fill Elizabeth up with water in the wintertime. And then the outlet to Elizabeth is at the south end.
right?
And then, so you can still go down Fraser Creek from Elizabeth, down to there's a set of falls, about 1.5 miles,
Yeah.
2 miles down from the bottom. And you can still see the little shacks that the guys would stand in
Oh, my.
to get out of the rain, because they were the guys with the pipe poles, making sure the logs would go down through the,
Wow.
and there's a log chute there too.
Yeah.
It's still there.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, interesting when you think how wind and they kept moving down through there then.
yeah, yeah.
Bass Creek had the same thing.
Okay,
Bass Creek, there was a place there where they used to run the wood down Bass Creek too.
When you look at Bass
out
Creek,
into the river,
Out
Yeah.
into the river,
Yeah.
yeah.
right. Right. Oh, wow.
We used to slide down that.
I'm just thinking though, all of the logging that was done in those little places. And as I say, I knew Fraser had them because we often found chains and you would find
Yeah.
the beams and lots of wood with dales in and everything. Must have been from docks and those kind of things.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking of there putting a volume of water in there. Wow. So would those camps that, like we had, have been after the logging was finished up there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right, yeah.
Right.
They stopped logging, they stopped the log drive down the Fraser Creek in the early 50s.
Yeah. Yeah, because when I was younger, I used to go up and check the horses there. There was Camp 7 up the Fraser Lake Road, and then down by Bass Creek
Right.
there was a camp there too.
Right.
Toivo Kotanen owned if I remember correctly, he owned the horses. I used to go in there and check the horses.
Well, one of the things that Lynn and I did when we were getting bottle digging, hundreds and hundreds of these little dark brown bottles, and Johnny all told me that it was an elixir type of thing they gave the horses to keep the energy up.
Oh,
Because they did so much work, but I can remember we could find hundreds of those bottles. They'd all be the same, and we used to think, what was in here? And then I don't know how I got talking, but Johnny all told me it was used for the horses.
Yeah,
okay.
keep their digestive system
Could have
working.
been.
Yeah,
Yeah, could have been, yeah. So was there a barn there like for the horses?
Yeah, they had made a barn. There were actually 3 of them. One at Bass Creek, one up Fraser Lake Road, and one up further, up the Cameron Foot, to head towards Pine.
Okay.
There was a camp there too. They had,
opposite, you know where the road down to Birch Point is?
Yeah,
As you're coming towards, heading north towards Pine Portage, the road to Birch Point's at the bottom of the hill.
right,
There's a road to the left.
okay.
Okay, it's pretty much grown in now.
Yeah.
And there used to be a logging camp in there with horses.
Okay, so just before you go through that rock cut, and then the road that goes down to the lake there,
That
down to
Abitibi
the
built
river.
that one.
That was okay, because
Yeah.
lots of people camped there. We
Yeah.
camped there a lot as well.
Yeah.
And
Then-
there must have been logging down in there or something, because there was lots of bottle digging down there that we found.
Abitibi had a couple of, I'll call them cruise shacks there, where guys would, in case they got stuck
Oh.
on Lake Jessie,
Right,
because the tugboats that they had weren't very powerful, and sometimes if you get a south wind, there's no way they could get the lock, and they'd get stuck, so they'd
Okay.
put in there,
there, right.
and they would overnight until the wind died down, and
Very nice place to camp. I
Yeah.
guess somebody still camps there now, but at one time there was lots
Yeah.
of people, and it was well cleaned out. I remember Alan and Butch Kovacs and that cleaning it all
Yeah.
out for camping there. It was
There
really
was-
nice.
when I was a kid, there was a nice beach there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to go camp there when we were kids.
Yeah, and there was a dock there when we camped there.
Yeah.
It was very nice there for sure. And a beautiful ride when you went up through the river and the mountains.
Through
on
Split
both
Rock.
sides. Oh,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, beautiful place to take a ride. Especially we take tourists, or if people came to visit us, that's where we would go.
Yeah.
Is up there.
One of the nicest boat rides I enjoy is north of Pine Portage. And you get to the heading north up the river, and you get to the point where you can either turn left, go into Forgan and up
Right.
through the overflow,
Yep.
or you can stay on the river and come up to Virgin Falls and
Right.
stuff. And that's such a lovely
Yeah.
boat ride, because it's all big white pine.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was
yes,
never logged.
Right. Yeah, I've been to the overflow before, so
Yeah.
interesting.
That camp burnt down.
Yes, I did hear
Yeah.
that it burned down.
When I was a kid, we used to go, Dad and I, we would go up to Virgin Falls. And there was the building there that they built for the Prince of Wales to stay in.
On the right-hand
On the
side.
right-hand side.
Right almost beside the dam.
Beautiful building. It was so nice. People would stay in there and then people started wrecking it.
That's the one I'd been to.
Yeah.
And all that was left was the fireplace and the chimney or
Probably.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I was a kid,
We used to stay in there.
We used to stay in there. It was a beautiful building. And then people just, I don't know.
Because I think at one time somebody said there was a book there and you could read, people would sign their names in it. I suppose it disappeared later on. but-
Probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's why it was built.
Yeah,
I didn't know why it was there
yeah.
at that time, but, yeah. Yeah,
Lots of people stayed there.
That would have been about 1905, 1910, something like that. And
Wow.
that was-
That's where Charlie Kitchenini came in. He was one of the guides there
oh, okay, okay.
that brought them on the Nipigon.
And
River.
they would come in from Orient Bay. That's how they would
Oh,
get there,
right, right, yeah,
because you couldn't go up the river. It was still a wild river at that time before the
Yes.
dams were built.
yes, right.
They portaged around there.
Oh, at Virgin Falls, yeah, yeah.
Right, right. So you grew up in a historical place, really, where you did, really.
Beautiful place. And I'll tell you, I think about all the times that we spent there. It was the best place to grow up, you know?
Right,
You know, some of the guys now are passed on that we grew up with, but still think of the things that we did and seen.
and I think when Gary Hill was here and did the interview, he said too, it was a great place to grow up.
About
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
You were visiting me about 10, 12 summers ago, and we're sitting in the sun porch, and this big old Buick comes pulling in the driveway. I don't know what the heck they were. This lady in the sky gets out. She's quite elderly. I recognize the name Ziegler. Are you related to Norma and Oliver? Yeah, there's our mom and dad. Oh, I grew up with Norma when I was a little kid. And so we showed her the pictures from the school pictures. And
Yeah.
it was just amazing. It was like, I'll say 1945 class picture. And I put that, and she named every kid off. I couldn't do that when the day after they took the picture.
yeah.
And her dad worked for Hydro, and they had gone moose hunting one day. This is before they built Pine Portage. This is in the 40s. And her dad and two other guys got in a canoe and went upriver, and they were never seen again.
oh, wow.
So then her mom and, well, I guess she had a sister or something, they moved to Toronto.
Oh, okay, wow,
But she still remembered all that.
wow. So they were out cruising. and-
Yeah, they were just on holidays, and
Wow. Good memories for her.
yeah.
Okay. Just tell me though, quickly, you must have moose hunted then when you mentioned moose, so the hunting up there. Oh, you were the hunter.
Yeah, lots of moose.
Okay, let's stop there, Kirsten. I will just, yes, because I forgot about the moose hunting, and of course that's one of the lines, isn't it? Halfway up there, you got to be careful you fish.
Oh,
you hunt
yeah.
on the right
Yeah,
side
the zone.
of the area.
East side and the west side there.
Right. You mentioned Ada and May.
Yes.
Okay, I was just a little kid, and Ada had that Chevy 57 Chevy.
Yep, that green one.
Beautiful. Yeah. Anyways, it was about supper time. They come cruising in our driveway. We live in Cameron. They get out of the car and knock on the door. And of course, we all have to go outside, eh? So they're standing there talking with my dad. Oliver, we shot a moose. Can you show us how to clean it? So she opens the trunk on the 57 Chevy and opens it up. Dad looks and says, Ada, that's not a moose, it's a caribou.
Oh, wow.
So they hurry up and cleaned it right there in the garage and
Yeah.
hid the evidence. And
Oh, my goodness.
But the caribou used to be, Mom was telling me, the caribou used to come down on the east side of the river. And if you go up by Pine Portage, where we hunted back in there, you could see where the caribou came through. She said they would come down through and then go across by Lake Jesse and then head over towards the Slate Islands, I guess, or whatever.
Wow.
When I was a kid on the islands, you were camped there, the caribou would come right up to the tent there and rub all over the tent or whatever.
on Lake Nipigon,
Lake Nipigon.
Wow.
the caribou used to, I don't say all of them, but a large number of the Lake Nipigon herd, or whatever it
Right.
was called, in the springtime, they would swim out to the Shakespeare Island.
Yeah.
You know, the big island
Yeah.
in the middle of Lake Nipigon?
Yeah.
And that's where they would calf, just to stay away from the wolves, and then they'd swim back before freeze up.
Interesting.
But my mom, she had Norwegian Elkhound dogs, and the M&R would borrow them, take them up to the island to drive the caribou into the lake. It was easier to tag them.
Oh, in the lake.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
And they were on that. There was a film crew from CBC, and I'm going to check into that, see if we can find that, if I can go back and see that film.
Right.
Because it was on TV, we actually watched it. And coming in with the boat, driving
Was that right?
Yeah, driving in onto the sand of it, and the dogs jumping out and gone into the bush. Yeah, so I'd like to, I'm going to have to check and see if we can,
Yeah, that would be interesting to read.
yeah,
People to read, see that for
But
sure.
I remember on South Bay camping, we'd go up there and tent on one of the beaches or somewhere on one of the islands or whatever. But I remember at night, the caribou used to come down to the shore to get into the breeze to get away from the flies. And they'd walk right by the tent. I
yeah,
remember looking out the tent window and there's like a herd of caribou walking by, just
yeah.
Wow. Interesting. I never hear people talk about caribou up there. It's always been the moose and the deer.
yeah.
And moose hunting has kind of eased off up there now. I don't know where they've all gone to, but
First moose I ever shot was right across the Fraser Lake Road.
oh, look.
Yeah. My dad and Huey Scarf. But we hunted, up Fraser Lake.
Yeah.
Moses Watt, he lived in behind where the powerhouse was, Cameron Falls. He lived up there, Moses Watt. And Terrence and my dad and I, we moose hunted quite a bit together.
Okay, Terrence Watt name that sounds familiar then.
Terrence
Yeah.
and Dexter. There was Beverly and Aurelia. And I can't remember the
Claudia.
Claudia. Apparently Terrence, Dexter passed away. They lived in southern Ontario.
Okay.
And Beverly, I believe, did.
Claudette, I mean.
Claudette,
Yeah.
yeah. Aurelia is still alive, and she
Married
goes
a
on.
hydro guy and she lives in Mississauga.
Yeah,
Ah, okay.
so,
Lots of people, that was one of the places you wanted to get a goose tag, was
Yeah,
for
that
that
zone.
area.
Yeah.
That zone, right, so
Yeah.
that zone, right, yeah.
Well, my dad and Huey Scarf and Don Collins, another hydro fella, in the early 60s, they built a log cabin east of Pine Portage. You had to climb up that big mountain,
Okay,
yeah,
and there was a lake in there called Francis Lake, and they built
okay.
what was it, 12 by 12?
something like that, yeah.
Big, huge poplar logs, and they built a
Lots of
Moose hunting.
buildings, so how did was the Boy Scout camp,
that's on the west side.
Yeah.
was that part of, like, hydro,
That used
put
to,
those buildings up?
that
Abitibi,
that used to
Oh,
be an
okay.
Abitibi
Oh,
log drive
Oh,
camp.
okay,
there was a camp there, yeah.
right,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
I remember Gary and I going up there, and his dad, Henry, looked after the drive there, right? And the big tug would be in there. A couple of the big tugs would come in there.
Oh,
Bigger than what we had down
From
below.
Lake Nipigon.
Yeah.
Orient
Okay.
Bay, remember those big
Yes,
tugs they
yes,
keep at Orient
yes.
Bay?
Yeah,
Yeah.
on the Sandy Covey Duck had.
Yeah.
There's a big boat there,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I could just remember taking guides to the camp there, and when you went canoeing, you could see where it flooded, because
Yeah.
all the stumps were all, that fascinated me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're canoeing right over all of those tree stumps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At that time where it was flooded, yeah.
One time my dad and Ray Coatman, they had state claims all the way along up to where the White Chutes Road was. You could go actually to Highway 11 from in there one time,
Okay,
and they had state claims in there for
What were they, a molybdenum or?
some kind of, I don't think anything ever came of it, but yeah, they prospected up in there.
well, it's interesting even just now, because we have a quad, and Ted is very active in all these quad rides that they're doing, and go up and look at that darn bridge when you go down the railway line.
Oh, yeah.
Out of Cameron, eh? And
Which bridge are you talking about? Is that the Cache Creek Bridge or
yes,
the Nipigon River Bridge?
No, the Cache Creek Bridge, oh, my.
It's nice because about 3 years before the CNR walked away from it, they redecked it.
But I mean, it just amazing to think that was built even.
Oh, yeah,
There.
yeah, when
The
it did,
building
in
of that.
1910 or whenever.
Yeah.
Especially a steel girder bridge with a big curve in it.
Yes.
You don't see very many
I
of
can
them.
only walk out, 2 feet and then
Oh,
that's
okay.
enough. But I'm surprised at the people that are going across, the two of them. What's the other one called? There's 2 big bridges like that.
There's the one on the Nipigon River at Power Machine.
Yeah.
Oh, the
Power
tar
machine.
machine, yeah,
Yeah.
no, there's 2. I thought there was 2 up the other way. Anyway, they go up and end up on Highway 11.
Yeah,
That's where
Yeah.
they go from Cameron. But just the ride from Cameron along the old railway line is
Yeah.
a pretty neat ride even,
Yeah.
just to go along there.
When my mom was a little girl, living in the original colony on the east side of the river, of course, there's quite a few more people who worked for the CNR back. There'd be section
Right,
maintenance section houses all the way along. And there used to be 2 or 3 families that worked for the CNR lived at Hogarth,
right,
which is 4 or 5 miles up the,
yeah.
and they used to have some pretty big gardens there because it was a good farm area in there.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, I remember Mom telling us stories of her and some of her brothers and sisters would walk from Cameron all the way up to Hogarth to play with
Kids up
their friends, their kids.
Oh, my.
And at the end of the day, the old CNR train steam engine would come chugging down the line heading towards Nipigon, and then they'd flag it down.
You get a ride.
They'd get a ride back.
Wow. Yeah. The whole area is really interesting.
We had a ski hill there too.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. At Cameron Falls at the generating station. As soon as you went up the road to go towards the tracks, where the tracks were up there on the left-hand side. I went down there once, it was too steep. Then we had our grandfather's skis. Great, big, huge skis. Anyways, I broke my ankle with them on because they didn't have harnesses that you could flip out of. And then Linda White, she was going skiing in Manitouwadge. Yeah, it was Manitouwadge, the school trip. She took the skis, and I can't remember whether she broke her leg or broke her ankle, but that was the end of the skis after that.
There was 2 families that lived in the colony in the 30s, and they were from Norway.
Oh,
And they're great skiers over there, and
Yeah.
that's how the skiing got a hold at Cameron.
wow.
I'm sure most of the skis at Cameron were homemade skis.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
But they used to ski Mom used to ski all over the place.
Yeah.
Because they doubled as cross-country skis and downhill skis. You had a set of skis
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
you know, that was it.
You knew in the prisoner of war camp, Mom was telling me when it was up there, she was in the military, she worked there. And the prisoners would walk down to Johnny's store from Fraser Lake to get the mail. And I guess one day one of them come in there and he gave the old salute there, and Johnny nailed him right under the chin there, put him out on the floor. Mary Uswa worked in the post office. They rang my mom up, said, send somebody down here to get this guy. He never was allowed to leave again. Only one prisoner, she said, took off for 2 days, but the flies got to him. But
What an interesting place to have a prisoner of war camp,
Well,
really.
they worked in the lumber camp.
Yeah.
That's what they did.
Way in the bush there.
Yeah, and it was their volunteer. They weren't forced to work. They got paid.
Right.
They could stay at Red Rock and do nothing, or they could,
Go up there.
yeah.
Yeah. Really interesting times. You guys lived in a historic time.
Yeah.
I know, and spent time up at the overflow there. Johnny and Olaf Blair and them had the shack there on the right-hand side. The lodge was on the left-hand side. We stayed up there fishing, and
Right.
great life, you know. Lucky to have, I feel very privileged and lucky to have been raised there in Cameron Falls.
Right.
You know, we had all our friends in Nipigon, and
The downside when you're a mischievous kid was every parent in town was your parent.
Right.
Yeah,
We could do with a little bit of that right now, I think. It might really be helpful, for sure. Where did you go to high school then?
Red Rock.
You went and came into Red Rock then
Yeah.
to go to high school.
Originally, it was,
Oh, no, it would have been at George O'Neill.
you're right, it was, because that's
Was it
where Aunt
the
Betty went to school.
Right,
Yeah.
it was at George O'Neill,
Yeah,
right.
and it was, they traveled back, the road had been built by then, and they traveled from Cameron either to Nipigon or Red Rock, and Larry Ruche's taxi. He had
Okay.
the contract to bring the kids into school.
Right, right.
and it didn't matter how bad the weather was, Larry always seemed to show up with that cotton picking bus to pick us
Yeah,
up.
it didn't matter, yeah. Nowadays, they cancel school, and
Yeah,
Snowflake comes down.
yeah,
They
well, I think
cancel
the only thing that disappointed Larry is they wouldn't let him put a plow on the front of the bus.
yeah, that's right.
Oh, God.
Then we had an interesting guy there, his name was Ray Wilson. And
Yes, I know Ray Wilson.
Yeah, yeah,
He used to build like Airstream trailers.
that was a home, everybody thought it was a bot. Like, it looked like from the factory.
Yeah. I remember going over there and spending hours and hours with Ray there helping me get me to do a little thing here or there. I was just fairly young then, eh? But he built these like Airstream trailers. Beautiful. I don't know sure what he
He
did.
moved into Nipigon and he lived behind
Yeah,
yeah.
Shade Ed School
Yep.
because he had a fold-up bicycle that he used
Yeah.
to ride, and I remember him for sure.
See, construction, when they were doing the job at Cameron, they had a couple buildings there. And I guess he got permission to use that one building because he built these big trailers in there.
Wow.
They were absolutely, I couldn't believe how nice they were. The finishing work he did inside them and everything, oh, unbelievable.
The other one I remember is Mason building his boat.
Yeah,
There was 3 boats built.
I just remember taking
Yeah.
pictures of him with his boat.
Jack Leese, he was the electrical engineer that came up from Toronto. And he built the first one, sailboat. And then Norm built one, and then
Right.
Jack built a second one.
Okay.
And I remember going down to the barn, the hydro carpentry shop barn, that's where they built them in. And going in there on the weekend, because they couldn't work on them during the
Right.
day. And going down there on the weekend and watching these guys. Norm was from England.
Right.
He knew what he was doing when it came to woodworking and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing what
Yeah.
they could do with a piece of wood, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Nothing else. Hand tools, hardly any power tools. Nobody
Right.
had them.
No.
and Olaf Blair's carpenter shop got smaller.
Yeah,
I guess so.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh God, lots of memories. You guys could write a little book about all of that.
And then Mom, had dogs, always had dogs. She had Siberian Huskies there, and I remember she sent some to the RCMP because when the Skidoos first came out, they didn't trust them up in Northwest Territories or the Yukon, and so Mom would send some dogs up there,
Because she raised them.
raised them, and we used to put them in the harness there. And Jet was the lead dog, put the bells on the harness there. Oh, he was so proud. Trotting down the road there, kids piled on the sleigh there.
So in the morning, well, I probably was in grade 1 or 2, Dad had built a half-size dog sleigh. Maybe 2 people could fit on it, and stand-up skis at the back. And Jimmy had a rabbit trap line.
Yeah.
Anyways, before we would go to school in the morning, we had to go check the snares. My brother Gordy and I, we'd sit covered in a tarp, you know, and the 2 dogs or 3 dogs, we'd go whipping up the trail,
Yeah.
and they knew where the snares were. They'd just stop.
Yeah.
Jimmy'd run in the bush, check the snare, come back out, boom.
Wow.
Yeah, you didn't have to tell them when to stop and when to start. They just knew when he's on the sleigh, we go.
Yeah.
Right.
My mom would always tell me, put the brake on. When Jet was the lead dog, you never had to put the brake on. He wouldn't go until I was made sure, and he made sure everybody pulled too. If you weren't pulling your weight, he would
Stop
pin to
it.
the dog that wasn't pulling their weight. But
Oh wow.
And then at recess time,
oh yeah,
down at the school, the dog's pulling all the kids
Kids
around
around.
on the sleigh.
Give him a ride.
well, we had this principal. He was from England, Mr. Wilkie, I think his name was, if I remember correctly. Anyways, his kids had never played baseball or done the things that we do because they were from England, right? So Jet would always come to school, and at recess we'd pull everybody around on the sleigh, and then come in the classroom and lay in front of the teacher's desk. Well, he said, no, the dog can't come in here. Anyways, it got to the school board, and the school board told him, yeah, the dog stays. Comes in with the kids.
It was unofficial school board, but it was just hydro people.
Yeah, hydro school board.
Hydro school.
One of my fondest memories, I was in grade 1, and it was early in the school year, and we were in the new school, and that classroom, the windows were south facing, so the sun, it's, you know, when you're a kid, sun's coming in, and yeah, I want to be outside. But anyways,
Yeah.
I remember looking out, and I could see 3 people coming across the ball field, heading towards the school. It was a mom and 2 kids. Blonde, just like this. Anyways, she comes over to the school and didn't speak a word of English, Finnish. But she knew enough to bring the kids, because it was time for the kids to start school. And they didn't speak any English at all. They lived in down by Bass Creek or something. They lived in the bush. The dad worked in the bush all winter long, and she had a garden. And in the summertime, I don't know what he did. He probably worked in the garden.
Probably.
Anyways, I remember those 2 kids. I can't remember their names at all, but within a few days, kids, they could talk.
Right.
You know, kids are kids. Eh?
Yeah.
And they pick things up they were there for about a year, and then I don't know where they went. They just didn't come back for grade 2, but it was just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then up at by Hogarth there or whatever, Johnny Iraqi was up there.
Oh, yeah.
And Jimmy and his sister, I can't remember her sister's name, Olga.
Yeah. Olga.
And I got their bicycle when they grew up there. I got their big CCM bike there.
Yeah,
I could barely touch the ground on it.
Thing weighed about 200 pounds.
But I got to go with Johnny on the
Pump car.
pump car there. I went down the tracks with him there. And then, Marino's moved in there. Francisco Marino went to school. He walked
From McCaskill to Cameron.
McCaskill into Cameron to go to school. And in summer he rode his bicycle.
Right.
But I think that's where Dad got the first Jeep from, was from
Yeah,
because they had a Jeep there so they could bring him in the wintertime. But
that was my first train ride, was when the Rockies moved from McCaskill to Nipigon, when they closed the McCaskill station down. And we all went, my dad and I don't know how many other guys from the Cameron, we went up to the McCaskill and took the stuff out of their house, loaded it onto the boxcar.
Oh.
And then the train backed up to it, we got to ride.